The Powerhouse Economies of the Future, revealed. The 2024 iteration of the World Economic League table, WELT, foresees a profound transformation in the hierarchy of global economies by 2038. A multitude of burgeoning markets are poised to ascend the rankings precipitously, while numerous affluent economies are projected to recede, including the erstwhile premier nation, heralded as the quintessential benchmark for evaluating the relative economic prowess of various nations. This annual dossier has been meticulously assembled by the UK's Centre for Economics and Business Research, SEBR, over the past decade and a half. 30. Ireland, 2038 GDP, $1.173 trillion, £925 billion. Ireland heralds one of the continent's most vibrant economies. Projections indicate an acceleration in growth from the preceding year's 2% to an annual average of 2.9% through to 2028, followed by a modest decline to 2.7% for the subsequent decade, deemed ideal for a mature economy. A growth rate oscillating between 2% and 3% augurs well for the Emerald Isles economic landscape. By 2038, Ireland is poised to ascend into the echelon of trillion-dollar economies, while its populace, now slightly exceeding 5 million, is anticipated to burgeon by an additional million by the decade's conclusion. Nevertheless, despite this prosperity, Ireland is forecasted to descend from the 26th to the 30th position in the WELT rankings by 2038, as several more rapidly expanding emerging economies are expected to surpass it. 29. Egypt, 2038 GDP, $1.198 trillion, £945 billion. The Egyptian economy faces numerous adversities, including persistently high inflation and unemployment rates, alongside substantial public sector indebtedness. Aggravating these challenges, a currency devaluation and interest rate increases are likely on the horizon this year. However, the outlook is not entirely bleak. The Center for Economics and Business Research, SEBR, remains optimistic about Egypt's future, foreseeing the nation as a pioneering force in green energy. The annual growth rate is projected to average 4.9% until 2028, then stabilize at around 5% over the ensuing decade. Consequently, Egypt is poised to ascend a remarkable 16 positions in the global economic rankings within the next 14 years, ultimately becoming the world's 29th largest economy by 2038. 28. Israel, 2038 GDP, $1.229 trillion, £970 billion. Israel's conflict with Hamas is exerting a significant impact on its economy, with the Ministry of Finance now projecting a growth rate of 2% for the coming year, a reduction from the pre-conflict forecast of 2.7%. The WELT report underscores both the immediate and extended economic consequences of the hostilities, encompassing infrastructure damage and diminished investor confidence. Nonetheless, the Center for Economics and Business Research, SEBR, remains optimistic, predicting Israel's growth will average 3.4% annually until 2028, with an increase to 3.7% in the subsequent decade. By 2038, Israel is expected to advance one position in the global rankings, with its gross domestic product, GDP, anticipated to exceed $1 trillion. 27. Thailand, 2038 GDP, $1.313 trillion, £1.035 trillion. Demonstrating robust resilience, the Thai economy is exhibiting growth propelled by a resurgence in tourism and invigorated exports. The Center for Economics and Business Research, SEBR, forecasts that Thailand will experience an average annual growth rate of 3.1% from 2024 to 2028. The nation's gross domestic product, GDP, is anticipated to surpass $1 trillion by 2033, and Thailand is projected to ascend 4 positions in the global rankings by 2038. Nonetheless, like many other nations, Thailand must contend with challenges such as an aging populace, relatively low productivity, and significant income inequality. 26. UAE, 2038 GDP, $1.351 trillion, £1.066 trillion. In late 2022, the UAE initiated an ambitious strategy to double its GDP by 2031, significantly amplifying its non-oil exports and tourism sectors. Although the Center for Economics and Business Research, SEBR, does not foresee the nation fully achieving this lofty objective, it still projects a robust annual economic growth of 4.2% from now until 2028. This growth is expected to accelerate to 4.5% by 2038, by which time the country's GDP will have surpassed the $1 trillion threshold. Unsurprisingly, the UAE is predicted to ascend 2 positions in the World Economic League table, WELT, by the conclusion of this forecast period. 25. Taiwan, 2038 GDP, $1.497 trillion, £1.181 trillion. Taiwan's economic landscape boasts numerous advantages, such as its preeminence in semiconductor manufacturing, minimal inflation rates, and high competitiveness. The Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, projects an average growth rate of 2.8% over the next 3 years, subsequently tapering to 2% annually until 2038. Taiwan's GDP is anticipated to exceed $1 trillion by 2028. However, not all outlooks are favorable. By 2038, Taiwan is expected to descend 3 positions in the global rankings, settling at 25th place, with the looming threat of a Chinese invasion posing a significant risk to its economic stability. During their recent summit in San Francisco, China's President Xi Jinping reportedly cautioned U.S. President Biden about Beijing's intent to reunify with Taiwan, ideally peacefully, not by force. As reported by NBC News, tensions are likely to escalate further as Taiwan prepares for its presidential election later this year. The front-runner, Lai Ching-te, is a staunch proponent of Taiwan's independence, a stance that is vehemently opposed by the Chinese government. 24. Switzerland, 2038 GDP, $1.529 trillion, £1.206 trillion. Prosperous Switzerland boasts numerous strengths in its economic arsenal, with its elite manufacturing and robust banking sectors standing out prominently. The Swiss economy is poised to reach the trillion-dollar milestone by 2028, with an anticipated average annual growth of 1.6% over the next 5 years. However, amid global shifts, banking upheavals, and evolving corporate tax policies, the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, foresees Switzerland slipping down the rankings by 4 positions during this period. Additionally, the nation is likely to face a critical labor shortage, as the number of retirees is expected to surpass the influx of new workers, exacerbating the challenge of maintaining workforce sustainability. 23. Philippines, 2038 GDP, $1.536 trillion, £1.212 trillion. A global growth frontrunner, the Philippines experienced remarkable economic expansion of 7.6% in 2022, marking its highest growth rate since 1976. Although the projected growth rate for 2023 is slightly lower at 5.3%, it remains commendable. Buoyed by a robust labor market, the Filipino economy is forecasted to grow by an average of 6.2% annually until 2028, with a slightly lower but still impressive 6.1% growth rate for the following decade. The economy is expected to reach the trillion-dollar milestone by 2033. As anticipated, the Philippines is set to ascend the World Economic League table, WELT, rankings, climbing 10 positions by 2038. 22. Poland, 2038 GDP, $1.554 trillion, £1.226 trillion. Poland is projected to join the ranks of trillion-dollar economies by 2033. Similar to many other countries, it has grappled with high inflation, which has somewhat stymied its economic progress in recent years. Nevertheless, with several positive indicators, including its steadily enhancing competitiveness, the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, forecasts that Poland will experience growth rates exceeding 3% between 2025 and 2031, eventually stabilizing to an annual average of 2.5% until 2038. Unlike several other high-income nations predicted to fall in the rankings, Poland is expected to ascend 1 position by 2038. 21. Vietnam, 2038 GDP, $1.559 trillion, £1.23 trillion. Vietnam's economic landscape is robust. The nation enjoys relatively low inflation and unemployment rates, with its public debt remaining within manageable limits. Furthermore, Vietnam benefits significantly from reshoring, as numerous Western companies opt to shift their manufacturing operations from China to the more congenial environment of Vietnam. These favorable conditions are reflected in the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, forecast, which anticipates an average annual growth rate of 6.7% between 2024 and 2028, followed by a slightly lower 6.4% annually during the following decade. Vietnam's GDP is expected to surpass the trillion-dollar mark by 2033. CEBR acknowledges that the Vietnamese government's ambition of achieving high-income status by 2045 is attainable, although there remains a risk of the nation falling into the middle-income trap. 20. Bangladesh, 2038 GDP, $1.720 trillion, £1.357 trillion. Bangladesh, the highest climber within the top 30, is anticipated to ascend 14 positions in the rankings by 2038. For those curious, the foremost climber in the World Economic League table, WELT, is Guyana, projected to surge an astonishing 51 spots due to a recent oil discovery in the nation. Bangladesh's economy is forecasted to sustain an annual growth rate surpassing 6% from now until 2038. The nation is expected to achieve trillion-dollar economy status by 2033, although the planning ministry has suggested this milestone could be reached by 2030 if growth rates exceed 8%. The primary drivers of this economic expansion will be the textile and garment manufacturing sectors. Additionally, Bangladesh is diversifying into lucrative industries such as pharmaceuticals and electronics, further bolstering its economic prospects. 19. Netherlands, 2038 GDP, $1.876 trillion, £1.48 trillion. The Netherlands achieved the trillion-dollar benchmark back in 2022. The nation's economy is anticipated to grow by 1.2% in 2024, followed by an annual average expansion rate of 1.6% until 2038. The Dutch government is diligently striving to establish a sustainable, fully circular economy by 2050, a goal that is expected to foster growth. Despite these efforts, the Netherlands is projected to descend 2 positions in the global rankings by 2038. 18. Saudi Arabia, 2038 GDP, $2.215 trillion, £1.747 trillion. Saudi Arabia joined the ranks of trillion-dollar economies in 2022. The nation is intensifying its efforts to diversify its economy and reduce its dependence on oil, resulting in significant improvements in its business environment and competitiveness. The Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, anticipates that Saudi Arabia's economy will grow at an annual average rate of 3.5% between 2024 and 2028, followed by an average annual growth rate of 2.9% over the subsequent decade. Regarding its position in the World Economic League table, WELT, Saudi Arabia is projected to maintain its 18th place ranking. 17. Turkey, 2038 GDP, $2.219 trillion, £1.751 trillion. Despite contending with significantly high inflation and elevated unemployment levels, Turkey has emerged as a trillion-dollar economy. According to the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, last year's growth rate is anticipated to be 3.5%. This figure is projected to decline to an average of 2.8% annually through to 2028, before experiencing a slight uptick to 2.9% over the subsequent decade. Although earlier optimistic forecasts from Standard Chartered and PwC positioned the country's economy in the 12th and 5th spots respectively by 2030, CEBR expects Turkey to ascend just 1 position in the World Economic League table, WELT, by 2028. It is predicted to gain another place by 2038, securing the 17th position in the rankings. 16. Spain, 2038 GDP, $2.549 trillion, £2.01 trillion. Exceeding all projections, the Spanish economy has already rebounded to its pre-pandemic levels, a milestone that was not anticipated until the end of this year. Looking ahead, Spain confronts numerous challenges, including persistently high unemployment rates and significant public debt. Consequently, growth is expected to decelerate from 2.1% in 2023 to an annual average of 1.6% until 2028, then further decline to 1.5% over the following decade. As a result, Spain is forecasted to descend 1 spot in the World Economic League table, WELT, by 2038. Having surpassed the trillion-dollar mark back in 2004 and holding an impressive number 10 position in the 2008 WELT edition, the future economic trajectory of Spain appears somewhat sobering. 15. Mexico, 2038 GDP, $2.783 trillion, £2.196 trillion. In 2022, Mexico surpassed its former colonial ruler Spain to become the preeminent Spanish-speaking economy globally. Mexico has enjoyed a robust post-pandemic recovery, benefiting significantly from the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement and the nearshoring of U.S. manufacturing from China's. Growth in Mexico is projected to decelerate to 1.2% in 2024, aligning with slower growth in the U.S., then average 2% annually until 2028, followed by a slight decline to 1.9% per year until 2038. Despite a predicted drop of 4 positions in the global rankings between now and 2038, Mexico is expected to remain ahead of Spain, continuing to hold its status as the leading Spanish-speaking nation according to CEBR. 14. Russia, 2038 GDP, $3.142 trillion, £2.479 trillion. Russia's economy appears to be performing adequately, with a growth rate of 1.6% anticipated for 2023.
This growth is largely driven by substantial military and governmental expenditures resulting from President Putin's unlawful invasion of Ukraine.
Unemployment has reached a historic low, with many working-age men engaged in the conflict, and there has been a significant exodus of skilled professionals from the country due to the ongoing war. The Russian economy faces the risk of overheating, characterized by rising inflation and elevated interest rates. The outlook remains bleak as international sanctions continue to exert pressure, while the United States aims to have Russia's oil and natural gas revenues by 2030. As a result, the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, forecasts that Russia will fall in the World Economic League table, WELT, rankings, dropping from 12th place in 2024 to 14th by 2038. 13. Australia, 2038 GDP, $3.153 trillion, £2.487 trillion.
Australia's post-pandemic resurgence has been commendable, although growth is anticipated to decelerate in 2023 due to persistent high inflation.
Despite this, the employment market remains exceptionally constrained. Looking forward, diminishing demand for the nation's fossil fuel exports as the global community shifts towards carbon neutrality could present significant challenges. Additionally, any economic slowdown in China or other crucial trading partners could further impede growth. Nevertheless, the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, still projects an average annual growth rate of 1.9% until 2028, which is expected to improve to a healthier 2.2% annually through to 2038. This growth trajectory will slightly elevate Australia's position in the World Economic League table, WELT, moving it from 14th to 13th place. 12. Italy, 2038 GDP, $3.236 trillion, £2.553 trillion. Italy grapples with soaring youth unemployment rates and substantial government debt, both of which stymie its economic growth. Given these challenges, the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, holds a rather bleak outlook on the nation's economic prospects. The forecast indicates an average annual growth rate of 0.9% over the next 5 years, tapering to 0.6% between 2029 and 2038. Presently positioned at 9th place in the 2024 World Economic League table, WELT, rankings, CEBR anticipates that Italy will descend 3 positions by 2038. 11. Indonesia, 2038 GDP, $3.669 trillion, £2.895 trillion. CEBR holds a notably optimistic view on Indonesia's growth prospects, even though a slight deceleration is anticipated during the latter part of the forecast period, propelled by rising competitiveness and productivity. Along with robust public finances and a potential boost in commodity exports, Indonesia's annual growth is projected to average 4.5% until 2029, before slightly declining to 4.3% for the remainder of the forecast period. Despite this minor slowdown, Indonesia is expected to ascend 5 positions in the World Economic League table, WELT, by 2038. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, is even more bullish, suggesting that Indonesia's economy could become the world's 6th largest as early as 2027. 10. Canada, 2038 GDP, $3.679 trillion, £2.902 trillion. Much like its southern neighbor, Canada seems to be managing inflation while sidestepping a recession. Although the nation still faces numerous long-term challenges, these challenges include declining productivity, reduced competitiveness, and substantial government debt. Additionally, a June 2023 report from the International Institute for Sustainable Development, ISD, revealed that the country's oil and gas sector is ill-prepared for the global shift toward green energy and the resultant decrease in fossil fuel demand. Given these factors, the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, predicts that Canada's economic growth will average a modest 1.7% annually until 2029, before increasing slightly to 1.9% through to 2038. Despite these challenges, Canada is expected to maintain its number 10 position in the World Economic League table, WELT, rankings. 9. South Korea, 2038 GDP, $3.682 trillion, £2.905 trillion. Similarly, the South Korean economy is poised for a difficult future, as the nation's declining birth rate and aging population threaten to stymie growth. However, the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, sees significant potential for the country to counteract this by boosting its productivity rate, which is currently less than stellar. Considering this, CEBR forecasts annual growth of around 2% until 2038, potentially marking South Korea's return to the top 10 economies for the first time since 2018. According to McKinsey, South Korea could ascend to the position of the world's 7th largest economy by 2040 if the government adopts a more progressive and forward-looking strategy. 8. Brazil, 2038 GDP, $4.131 trillion, £3.259 trillion. Brazil's economy is demonstrating an unexpected resilience, driven by rising exports, decreasing unemployment, and robust wage growth, all contributing to an increase in GDP. For 2023, growth is projected to be 2.9%, then decline to an annual average of 1.9% until 2029, stabilizing at 2% until 2038. Although this growth rate is not particularly remarkable, it will enable Brazil to maintain its current 8th place position in the World Economic League table. It is noteworthy that Brazil held the position of the world's 6th largest economy in 2012 before the economic crisis of the 2010s caused it to drop in the rankings. 7. France, 2038 GDP, $4.813 trillion, £3.811 trillion. The French economy, which held the position of the 5th largest globally as recently as 2013, has since slipped to 7th place. It is anticipated to maintain this ranking through to 2038, avoiding further decline, bolstered by an increasingly favorable environment for foreign investment and a strong commitment to its green transition. France aspires to become Europe's first major decarbonized economy. Following a sluggish 2023, annual growth is forecasted to average 1.4% until 2028, then increase slightly to 1.5% for the remainder of the forecast period. This represents a downgrade from the 2023 edition of the World Economic League table, WELT, which had previously pegged France's growth between 2028 and 2038 at 1.7%. 6. UK, 2038 GDP, $5.771 trillion, £4.552 trillion. The UK is projected to maintain its status as the world's 6th largest economy throughout the forecast period. Although inflation is gradually cooling, it remains above the Bank of England's target. While interest rates are expected to begin declining in early to mid-2024, they are likely to stay elevated for a considerable time. These factors, along with other economic challenges, will contribute to a modest growth rate of 0.5% in 2024. However, as monetary policy becomes more accommodative, a notable increase to 1.9% is anticipated in 2025, with annual growth rates ranging between 1.6% and 1.8% projected through to 2038. 5. Germany, 2038 GDP, $7.434 trillion, £5.864 trillion. Europe's manufacturing powerhouse, Germany, faced significant challenges due to the energy price surge in 2022. This situation was exacerbated by its heavy dependence on Russian natural gas, necessitating a swift search for alternatives. The German economy is estimated to have contracted by 0.4% in 2023. However, growth is expected to resume this year at a modest 0.7%, projected to rise to 1.6% in 2025, and then stabilize to an average of 1.3% annually until 2038. After surpassing Japan to become the world's 3rd largest economy in 2023, Germany is now predicted to slip back to 4th place by 2026 and drop to 5th in 2027, where it is expected to remain for the rest of the forecast period. For Japan, 2038 GDP, $8.894 trillion, £5.865 trillion. Japan has faced stagnant growth since the 1990s and continues to struggle to emerge from this stagnation. The country is expected to reclaim its position as the world's 3rd largest economy by 2028. However, this is anticipated to be more due to the EU's lackluster growth rather than Japan's own economic strength. By 2033, Japan is predicted to fall back to 4th place. The Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, predicts low growth for Japan throughout the forecast period, primarily due to its rapidly aging population and reluctance to adopt mass migration as a solution. According to a study by the Recruit Works Institute think tank, Japan could face a shortage of up to 11 million workers by 2040. 3. India, 2038 GDP, $12.881 trillion, £10.162 trillion. India's economy boasts numerous advantages, including a young, well-educated populace, a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem, and burgeoning manufacturing output. For 2023-24, growth is forecasted at a robust 6.4% and is expected to maintain this pace throughout the forecast period, elevating the country 2 positions in the World Economic League table, WELT, rankings by 2038. Looking further ahead, the Center for Economics and Business Research, CEBR, anticipates that India could become the world's leading economy sometime in the 2080s, based on demographic trends and projections. 2. USA, 2038 GDP, $47.827 trillion, £37.732 trillion. Holding the title of the world's largest economy since overtaking China in the 1890s, the United States is anticipated to be dethroned in 2037, 9 years later than initially predicted by SEBR in 2020. With inflation easing and other indicators showing positive trends, the US seems to be navigating towards a soft landing. Growth was expected to reach a solid 2.2% in 2023, though this figure may slightly decline this year. The US's growth rate throughout the remainder of the forecast period will not, however, prevent China's economy from surpassing it. Yet, China's return to the top is expected to be brief. SEBR forecasts that the US will reclaim its number one position during the 2050s, only to be surpassed by India in the 2080s. 1. China, 2038 GDP, $48.811 trillion, £38.508 trillion. Watch 0.5 as China's post-pandemic recovery has been uneven, with 2023 growth projected at 5.1%, significantly lower than the remarkable rate seen in the 2000s. Although growth is expected to moderate further over the forecast period, it will remain robust enough to propel China to the top of the World Economic League table, WELT, rankings by 2038. Nevertheless, the economy of the People's Republic faces two major challenges: a struggling property sector and an aging population. As mentioned, China's tenure as the world's leading economy may be brief, and this forecast depends heavily on the country refraining from invading Taiwan. Should such an invasion occur, China might never surpass the United States.